The Cardinal and the Barber by Miles Green. Chapter 1. A Letter Begun. The October sky glowed citrus gold over Yarlsford's western edge. Smoke rose from chimneys and thin cold ribbons. Across the street, a faded 1915 recruitment poster flapped in the wind, its corners tearing softly. From the third floor of a brick building, Marcello Devon sat hunched over a worn desk. His suspenders stretched over a cream shirt, and a blue bow tie lay carelessly aside. A few stray marbles sat by the inkwell. The letter from 3 days ago waited beside him, with no name on it and a broken seal. The only sign of life was a childish sketch of a wilted sunflower at the bottom, and handwriting he'd thought he'd never see again. He found it on the floor when he came back from closing the shop one evening. Someone had been inside, careful enough to avoid detection, deliberate enough to ensure that he'd discover the letter. The thought alone twisted his spine. For weeks, he'd dismiss small displacements he'd catch, a book off angle, the drawer not quite shut, as his own forgetfulness. Now, he wasn't so sure. Somewhere, someone still knew what he'd done, even if he no longer did. The forgetting frightened him more than guilt ever had. Sometimes, a name hovered at the edge of his memory, almost there, then gone. His past slipped through his fingers and left only emptiness. He'd read it again. Each word carried a quiet dare. Do you remember? Not clearly, but the ache that followed rang truer than any recollection. Once, memory had been his trade. Now even breakfast was guesswork. If they remembered what he couldn't, then they held the advantage, one he had no way to defend against. A sudden flash, smoke, a woman's voice, a sharp sting behind his eyes. The same flashes he'd been seeing since breaking the letter seal. The first two lines played in his mind. Many answers remain concealed. Even light leaves orders. Darkness endures, voicing other names. Beyond the window, a murmur carried through the evening streets, too low to make out, too consistent to ignore. He couldn't shake the feeling that the sound had followed him from the shop. He told himself it was only the market traders closing. Maybe. Still, the sound kept tugging at him. Lately, every unfamiliar note felt like a signal meant for him, though he couldn't have said why. A blue jay perched across from him, patient as a wise elder. Sammy moved with a familiar grace, quick, alert, always watching. He was never caged, yet he stayed. The bird had been restless all afternoon, hopping and turning as if sensing something in the walls or the street below. Marcello exhaled through his teeth, the pen tapping against his temple. Before him lay his response, partially written, ink lines trailing where his thought had failed. His hand hung in the air, unsure whether the act was confession or resurrection. He had to answer the letter tonight, or silence would remember him first. Sometimes he wondered if his loss of self wasn't tragedy, but consequence. The apartment was still, but the world moved on without him. Yarlsford's beauty had soured. There'd been a line near the end of the letter that he couldn't dismiss, even if he tried to forget. The twilight carries your promise, though you've long forgotten the weight of it. He had no memory of making this promise, but every twilight since had felt like an accusation. The blue jay tilted his head, feathers shifting in the quiet room. He hopped once, twice, then glided down from the perch. His dark eyes studied the page, the loops of ink, the hesitation in each stroke, before turning back to Marcello. No chirp, no flutter, only a shared stillness that reached farther than words could go. Something in Marcello's face changed, as if some part of him had expected Sammy's small act. Sammy nudged the pen with his beak, a gentle instance that said, "Be still, begin again." Then, as if unsure of his own words, He took a small step back. Marcello lowered his hand and began to write. The strokes came slowly at first, then steadier, gathering purpose. The bird stayed watchful, both a guardian and a witness, as the words formed. They did not speak, yet the air between them seemed to. Sammy watched Marcello's brow furrow. He hopped to the inkwell and kicked a stray marble from the edge, smudging the line Marcello had labored over. He stopped mid-sentence. The pen slipped from his fingers with a dull thump. "So you're finally going to tell me," he said. 3 sharp knocks broke the quiet. Marcello froze. He and Sammy turned toward the door. He slid the letter and reply beneath a stack of papers, tucking them under the inkwell's shadow, and glanced at the window. The street whispered with grit. Another knock, slower this time, like a sailor testing a hull before leaving port. Marcello drew a deep breath and crossed the room. He opened the door. A tall, familiar figure stood framed in the corridor's light.
"I won't say it, but I'll say it. You couldn't have dragged yourself out here fast enough."
Dylan Walls grinned. A crate balanced in his arms as if weightless. His clothes carried the salt of the sea, and his sunlit eyes gleamed with the mischief of a man who had cheated death more than once. Marcello's tension cracked. Laughter slipped free. "Yeah, I knew it was you," Marcello said, relief slipping through his voice.
"Glad to see your excitement for this old man,"
he said, laughter breaking like a wave. Walls had been one of the first faces he'd known when he came to Yarlsford, and they stayed close, trading stories of the seas and the far-off places he'd ventured. From the corner, a streak of blue flashed. Sammy leapt into the air and landed neatly on Marcello's shoulder. The bird's feathers had the sheen of polished glass.
Well, well,"
Walls said, reaching a hand. His knuckles brushed the bird's wing with surprising gentleness.
"Still grooming this prince, or does he keep himself handsome for my sake?"
Marcello shook his head. "He tolerates me. The charm's all yours." As Walls moved closer, Marcello's eyes shifted to the letter sticking out beneath the stack of papers on the desk. 3 days, and it still hadn't let him go. Walls stepped inside and carried the crate to the desk with a soft thunk. Dust motes leapt into the lamplight. Beneath the lid, small parcels, coffee beans black as coal, ribbons of cloth stitched in island colors. He lifted an ornate cedar box with both hands, reverence softening his usual grin. Marcello stepped closer.
"Found it buried in books,"
Walls said quietly.
"An abandoned house outside of Puerto Sol. Inside."
He lifted the lid. Pale velvet cradled cigars the color of dark wine, their skins veined with traces of violet and plum. Sammy fluttered down to the desk beside the box, claws brushing on the wood. He tapped the edge with his beak, curious, his reflection shimmering in the cedar's polish. Marcello held his hand above the cigars, his fingers drifting lazily above the box. Walls watched, his grin fading into a smile as Marcello leaned in.
"Something unique,"
Walls murmured. Marcello's mouth curved. He reached out, then drew back.
"Tobacco's called Araguaca, grows only in Puerto Sol. Islanders say it keeps the storms in its leaves."
He chuckled softly.
"I asked the crew what that meant. They gave me that same monkey face you're giving."
Marcello chose a cigar, its scent rising to meet him. Deep, spiced, alive. Something in the scent pulled at him, familiar in a way he could not name, as though memory had a smell long before it had a shape. A low hum filled his ears. The room swayed, the edges of things bending as his pulse kicked hard. The air distorted and the room gave way. For a second, he registered nothing but the beat in his ribs, slow and steady, like someone knocking from inside his body. Laughter burst from his chest, his own voice, younger, brighter, freer. The chair was gone. He ran through a sun-soaked field, golden hills rose around him. For a moment, he couldn't tell if this joy was memory or dream, only that the wind carried the doubt away. His pulse became the drum of running feet. His legs were strong, his lungs wide with air, each stride carrying something fiercer than happiness. He was alive. Sammy's chirp seemed to appear from nowhere. Then it was gone. The dry soil crumbled beneath his soles, rows of tobacco towering on both sides. Broad leaves brushed his arms and cheeks as he flew between them. Sweat stung his eyes. Each breath filled him with the smell of crushed leaves and salt. 3 boys gave chase, their voices just as wild. Brothers or friends, it no longer mattered. They were bound not by name, but by rhythm, the perfect sync of their pounding feet. They shouted in a language older than English, one his mind couldn't grasp, but his soul understood. The heat shimmered the air, sticking to his skin. He felt everything. The burn in his calves, the slap of a palm on his shoulder as one boy caught up, the breath of salt-kissed air beyond the fields, felt more than seen. Beneath it all, that current of innocence, bright and unbroken. In that instant, chased by the only souls who truly knew him, he wasn't only remembering, he was in the moment. He was that boy again. Barefoot, boundless, alive. And the man with the cigar in his hand was forgotten. Laughter thinned like a tide as salt and crushed green leaves gave way to aged wood and tobacco. The wind's whistle became the hiss of a cigar. Heat sank into memory. Then, silence. The quiet that followed was heavy, settling into the room. A cart rumbled by outside, grounding him again. He had seen the boys, the fields, the sun-drenched air, so real he could still feel the earth under his feet before the weight of the room returned. He gasped. The room snapped back in fragments. Bits of leaf clung to his sleeves. Terror pulled one way, and wonder the other. Part of him wanted to chase the vision back, but part of him feared what waited if he tried. Disoriented, he looked around. Sammy perched close, feathers ruffled. The cigar lay on the velvet lining where it had fallen. The colors dulled slowly, the world losing its sharpness. For a moment, he still felt the boy's laughter against his skin. A heavy hand landed on his shoulder.
Marcello!
Behind his eyes, the island still lingered. The boys, that impossible bliss. Marcello sagged forward, one hand braced on the desk, reality still wavering. His heart pounded in his ears. A gentle tap broke through the haze. Sammy had hopped nearer, wings slightly open, dark eyes bright with concern. The bird tilted his head and gave a soft chirp, so faint it might have been a thought. Marcello blinked, the sound drawing him back. Walls' grip tightened.
Marcello!
Marcello turned slightly, voice rough.
Just dizzy.
The scent. Walls frowned, steadied him into the chair, and crouched until their eyes met.
You went pale. Wasn't sure how steady your senses were.
He said with a chuckle. Marcello tried to speak, but the words twisted behind his tongue. The truth burned too bright to name. The field, the laughter, the warmth that still throbbed in his chest. He swallowed hard.
It was more than a memory.
He whispered. I felt this. Walls studied him, his expression sobering.
Daydreaming will do that. Or maybe a strong brew?
Marcello bit down on the words.
No, it wasn't a dream. It was more. You think too hard for a man with no answers.
Marcello stared at Walls.
Thinking's all I have left some days.
Sammy pecked at Marcello's sleeve. Steady yourself. Walls' eyes flicked to the bird.
Whatever it was, he said. Don't let it swallow you. Some storms don't let go.
Marcello laughed.
That's Sammy's tusk.
At his name, the blue jay fluffed his feathers, letting out a short trill. Walls smirked.
Aye, someone's got to keep you upright besides me.
Marcello pushed the crate aside and wiped a bit of dust from his hands, revealing a carved symbol. He traced his thumbs around the grooves until the shape was clear. A sunflower, the same one from the letter that came to him.
Where did you get this? I found it below deck, amongst a pile of others that don't seem to stop growing.
The silence hung between them, waiting for someone to break it. Marcello leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes on the air where the vision had been.
I felt joy,
he murmured.
Not mine, but something older.
Walls nodded slowly.
Maybe reminders are better than forgetting. Some of us keep bits of the world in boxes just to remember we lived.
Marcello's lips parted, but no sound came. Forgetting had been his only defense, and now he wasn't sure he wanted it back. Walls clapped his hands suddenly, breaking the spell.
Enough lore for one morning,
he said with a renewed grin.
Here, eat this. It'll help.
He reached into his coat.
Brought you a treat. Cinnamon bread for the soul and biscuits for the bird.
He offered a bow.
2 Crumbs Bakery. New this morning across from your shop.
Marcello blinked, steadying himself into the chair as the world came back into focus. Walls tossed a small paper sack into his lap. The scent of warm sugar and spice rose, soft and human. For the first time since the vision, his mouth eased. Fragile, but real.
Owned by a mother and daughter. Seems the old lass got the temper of a cannon and the voice to match. Her daughter, though. Beautiful. You'd like her.
He added with a wink.
Not that I'd know, Walls went on. I'm shackled to the sea, remember?
Then you're lucky she still takes you back. Walls barked a laugh.
Aye, she does, though she charges interest in rough waters.
Marcello smiled, though the image of weathered decks and endless horizon brought a pang. Walls had always been what Marcello wasn't, untethered, unafraid of the sea or his own past. Sammy hopped nearer on the desk, eyeing the bag. He pecked at it once, impatient. Walls raised a brow.
I guess he's not one for foreplay.
Marcello tore the bag open and handed him a small sugar biscuit. Sammy took it delicately, puffing with satisfaction. For a while, the room felt normal again. Laughter, the scent of cinnamon grounding them. Walls studied Marcello. The humor eased from his eyes.
You sure you're all right?
Marcello nodded. Just tired. I'll be fine. Walls didn't look convinced. His attention drifted to the desk, to the envelope sticking out beneath the pile of papers. He reached out, then stopped himself.
Whatever that is, he said. Don't let it pull you under.
Marcello said nothing, but the lack of words spoke enough. From the apartment below, a dog began barking, insistent, echoing up through the floor. Walls groaned.
To be fair, the bugger heard me walk past my door to come up.
Marcello laughed.
You must have wronged him in another life. Wouldn't be the first.
Walls winked, buttoning his coat. Marcello stood with him.
I appreciate it, for everything.
Walls clapped a hand on his shoulder like a brother.
Don't mention it,
he said, then added.
Just don't vanish into your thoughts again. The world's already full of spirits.
His eyes flicked back to Marcello, as if unsure whether to stay or follow through. Then, with the certainty of a man who'd written out every squall, he turned and stepped into the hall. The door closed behind him with a muted click, leaving a question hanging in the air. Marcello exhaled. The traces of comfort lingered, then drifted. For an instant, he heard something distant, the muffled chant of voices drifting up from the street. The protests had been growing all month, voices rising against the council's decisions, names shouted into the cold. He didn't follow the politics, not closely, but even he could feel the city's unrest tightening like a tourniquet. Marcello let his back sink against the door, His legs trembled, unsteady beneath him. He pushed away from the door and crossed to the desk, each step reminding his body how to move again. The cigar box was foreign, an intrusion from a reality already beginning to blur. He set it atop a tower of worn journals, cracked spines bending under the weight. He turned to the window. His reflection faded into the city beyond, roofs and lights flickering awake. Below, the crowd's voices swelled, a reminder that the world was moving, even if he wasn't. A dull pain throbbed behind his left eye. He blinked hard, blaming sleepless nights. Marcello watched until the pattern of lights blurred in his eyes, then turned slowly towards Sammy.
He hasn't stopped for days now,
he murmured. The Blue Jay answered with a tilt of his head. Marcello instinctively mirrored him. Sammy let out a note too sharp for comfort. The sound settled inside Marcello's thoughts rather than in the room itself. Stay with it, the voice urged. Right. He blinked, and the light smudged, stirred by an invisible current. A sting flared behind his left eye. A single drop of blood welled and fell, spattering the windowsill. It spread slowly, a dark bloom of blood. Sammy startled from his perch and hopped onto the desk with a quick, questioning slant of his head. The little bird tugged a rag from the corner. Marcello took the cloth from him. He pressed the cloth to his eye, warmth spread in his fingers, ink and blood mingling, smelling faintly of iron and old pages. He wiped his face clean, folded the rag, and rose, pacing the floor. Sammy mirrored him from the desk. With unwilling fingers, he then sat down to continue. The words that had eluded him for days finally gathered, unbidden, at the edge of his mind, ready to be named. And as the first line flowed across the page, the room seemed alive again. His heart picked up the moment the pen touched the page. I saw them. I knew them. I knew that land, the sun, and I knew myself. There was this joy, the kind I haven't felt since, I don't know when, maybe ever. You are right, but how? Please, I want to remember. Show me how. Show me everything. He signed the letter, sealed it, and carried it to the bedroom windowsill. He placed it gently beside Sammy's small basket, his nest, just as instructed in the original message. The bird darted into the room and onto the sill, tapping the envelope once with his beak. Whoever came into my apartment to leave these words, I'll find them. I won't look away this time. Sammy shifted on the sill, feathers ruffling in that familiar way he did before slipping out into the world to do what he does. The bird often came and went as he pleased, sometimes returning before Marcello ever realized he'd flown. Marcello extended his arm, brushing the bird's feathers with his fingertips. Sammy chirped once, then nuzzled his head against Marcello's wrist. Outside, the chant faded but never died. Whatever the voices wanted, their longing was now his own. This time, he listened before the silence did. From the alley below, a child's laugh rose once and vanished, like someone had called his name without using a voice. He stood very still.